I've played all FromSoft games. Well, besides maybe Kingsfield, but I've played all the Souls games, Sekiro, Bloodborne, Armored Core. My favorites have always been Dark Souls 1 and 3. I started with Dark Souls 1, so it has a special place in my heart. Not only did Dark Souls 3 serve as a perfect sequel to the first game, but the boss quality was astounding. It has my favorite boss in the whole Soulsborne Kiro franchise, and that's Slave Knight Gale. His lore summarized consisted of being a slave knight, finding a home in the painted world with the painter girl, pushing on to the ends of the earth to save them by attaining the Dark Soul, and then finally letting go of his life when he bleeds out and realizes he finally acquired it, believing that you, who also made it there, will take it back to the painter. At least that's my interpretation of his lore anyways. So for me, boss quality is not just how good the bosses are. Yes, Gale is a top tier boss mechanically and cinematically, but the lore is what puts him over as my top 1 favorite boss. My other favorites include Artorias from Dark Souls 1, Ludwig from Bloodborne, and the Demon of Hatred from Sekiro. All great bosses, or is it Sekiro? My bad. But they're all great bosses, all amazing lore. Now, Elden Ring, while not being my most loved Souls game, is still one of my favorite games of all time. That said though, the base game of it didn't have a boss that quite cracked my top 5 bosses in their games. Hoarah was close. I loved his lore and the fight was great, but I didn't feel as obsessed with reading his lore and doing the fight over and over like I was with some of the other bosses that I mentioned. He's definitely in my top 10 bosses though. With the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC releasing and my top 3 bosses in FromSoft history all being in the DLC portion of those games, I was expecting to be blown away by at least one of the bosses, and I was. While the final boss and multiple other Remembrance bosses are very high quality, Messmer the Impaler has that combination of an amazing fight and amazing lore that I really look for in my favorite bosses. It's strange that I feel this way now because if we go back to the trailers for the Elden Ring DLC, while we were all very positive about it, you have to admit that Messmer, he felt kind of just thrown in out of nowhere. There's little mention to his possible existence in the base game, outside of maybe an NPC dialogue talking about America having a discarded child, or the Fire Spear America, which I'm assuming is his doing. Messmer the Impaler is his title after all, and he uses a flaming spear when you fight him. Before the fight, let's talk about the lore. Now, I'm no Vadividya, or is it Vadividya? My bad if I'm mispronouncing it. I'm just a guy who is passionate about the game and this fight, so I'll probably be missing more information than you're used to from the best Souls lore YouTubers, but I feel like I have a good idea of who Messmer is, what his deal is, and stuff like that. So Messmer is a child of America, similar to his brother Mikola and his sister Melania. He was born with a curse, while Mikola was cursed with eternally being a child, and Melania Scarlet Rot. Messmer was cursed with the Abyssal Serpent, entangling him and infecting his body. Now, from what I understand in Elden Ring, snakes are the natural enemy of the Erdtree and the Golden Order. So one of America's strongest children being infected by a powerful serpent is obviously a huge problem for her. Because of that, she replaced his eye with a golden seal that he breaks to unleash the full power of the serpent for the second phase of the boss fight. She also tried to heal him in other ways. You find an item in the DLC called Blessing of America, with the item description saying, a special physic blessed by America, the Queen of the Erdtree. America once created several of these physics for Messmer's sake, but never again. Also, if you read his remembrance, it says, a malevolent snake writhed within Messmer, and so his very mother plucked out his eye and put it in place a seal of grace. Yet, having done so, her fear compelled her to secret away her child within the realm of shadow, hidden away, keeping company with the original sin, and a hatred that would not be confined. So America clearly tried to help her son, but felt the threat of the serpent was too much, and left him to rot in the realm of shadows, turning him into an extremely bitter ruler of fire, ruling over the lands and killing countless, with statues of his mother decapitated placed all over the land, and especially in his keep. She was wrong about him. Even in his current frail state, the snakes don't have control over him. He simply uses them as tools. You can tell that he really loved his mother before all this. When you enter the fight, he says, Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light? Clearly showing jealousy that she is trusting a tarnish to become lord, despite casting him away for not being pure. After everything, he even asks for her forgiveness, when taking out his eye to begin phase 2. So that's Messmer's lore as far as I know it. Mama's boy turned into emo Snake Man. I personally love it. I feel bad for him, but also think it's the right thing to take him down. An amazing tragic villain. Now as far as the fight goes, I love it. Messmer is super fast paced and can easily run you over. That's probably what will happen in your first few attempts. But with clear openings once you find the dodge timing on a string of attacks. He also bleeds and is stunnable. Feels so good when you go from getting mauled by him in seconds and hearing his win quote over and over, like I'm sure many of us did, to finding enough openings to stun him and eventually win. The second phase is very chaotic and cinematic, like that big snake movie does where it's like a big AoE with all the snakes coming out. I had no idea to get away from that at all at first. But it's not impossible to find the patterns and take advantage of it. The design of him in that phase with the hole in his eye and the white serpent is also really cool. Overall, it's just a good old-fashioned, fast-paced FromSoft boss battle that keeps you on your toes and makes you feel like a god when you figure him out and take him down. So all in all, between the great fight and great lore, Messmer is likely in my top 5 FromSoft bosses. Let me know what you think about him in the comments down below, and let me know if you'd like to see this type of video done on other FromSoft bosses.